Welcome to our JA Virtual Speaker Series, where we're learning more about the careers of people who live in the Colorado Springs community and are here to talk about the role that they've played in helping to develop this community and helping to give back here, and also about the path and the journey that they took on their way. We're here with Lisanne McNew, and she is the president and COO of McNew and Associates, as well as the vice president of Safe Engineering, which is a new role for her and an unexpected twist in her career journey, which she's excited to tell you about. Lisanne, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the students today and taking an opportunity to share your story and tell us a little bit more about your career path and your journey, and provide some more insight and advice for our students today as well. First, could you introduce yourself? Tell us about the role that you're in right now. In both roles, I know you're working with two different companies. Tell us a little bit about your role with your own company, McNew and Associates, as well as your new role at Safe Engineering.
Yeah, Angie, well, thank you so much for having me here today. This is wonderful. I love JA and just excited to do this. So as you mentioned, I'm the president and COO of McNew and Associates. So McNew and Associates, my husband and I actually own that company. We started that company back in 2007 now, so it's been a long time. And McNew and Associates, we do consulting and back office support for government contractors. So you're like, what the heck is that? We help keep government contractors out of trouble with the government. So a lot of Department of Defense contractors and things like that. It's a lot of accounting and compliance work. And so as the president and COO there, I'm really responsible for the day-to-day management and operations of the company. So I work with our employees, I work business development, I work with all of the operations, making sure that our clients are happy, all of those sorts of things. As I mentioned, we do accounting and audit work. So all of my employees are actually accountants or have done auditing work. So for example, my husband was an auditor for the Department of Defense. I am not an accountant by trade. I do, like I mentioned, all of the business side of things. So they're all the smart ones. I just take care of the business side. And then, as you mentioned, I'm the vice president for Safe Engineering. So with that role, I kind of do the same thing. I manage the day-to-day operations, the business side, the employee side, business development. But what's interesting about that is that they are all engineers. So with them, we do corrosion and fatigue testing and things like that on airplanes for the government as well as for the commercial world. So they're super, super smart. They talk all engineering stuff, and I do not do that. I run the business side. I'm good at that, the business side. So that's really what I do on a day-to-day basis. So two different things, working kind of in the government realm, but very, very different: accounting and auditing, and then engineering.
And that's so interesting, because as a student picks a career choice or a career field, and they might pick a major, and they might say, I will work in engineering, I will work in accounting. So you're working with folks that have very specific trades, right? The professionals you're working with have trades. Would you say that your trade is business, just business management, operations management? If they're accountants and engineers, what would you say is the skill that you're bringing to the table in leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I'm going to answer that in two different ways, actually. So yes, I would say it's more on the business side, business management, business operations. But what's funny, and I hate to get ahead of this here, but none of my degrees are in business. But I've always done business. That's just something that, to be honest, I'm good at, and I enjoy it. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy the business side of things. But you might laugh. My undergrad is in kinesiology, sports science, and my master's is in leadership and research. So the leadership side does, but it's not even in the business side. And so it's kind of funny when you set out to do a career path. Sometimes the education side isn't always what you end up in. It's kind of where you just end up. So, but yes, it's more of a business side.
Tell me this, when you were in, let's say, middle school, approaching high school, middle school or high school, what did you think was going to be your career choice? Could you have seen where you ended up in business, or was sports, kinesiology, sports medicine, was that really a focus for you early on? Were there career aspirations you had that changed?
Oh yeah. So let's start from elementary school because this is a really funny story. So I definitely knew where I wanted to be. So elementary school, like when I was, well, I wouldn't even say elementary school, when I was really young, I guess I told my parents that I wanted to be a fire truck, not a fireman. I wanted to be a fire truck because those were super, super cool. As I got older, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Actually, I wanted to be a high school history teacher. I loved history. I think that I really loved my history teachers. And that was really in middle school and high school. And so I fell in love with that. And I always wanted to be a high school history teacher. And so when I went to school and went to my undergrad, that's actually what I started as. And so I did my first 3 years and I did student teaching. And I started to get my major in history, and I actually did a double major. I did history and kinesiology, sports science. As I got a little bit further on, I decided that I really wanted to go into the sports medicine side. My mom had changed her careers, and she was a hairdresser her whole life, and then she changed and she went to be a professor of kinesiology. And so I really fell in love with that field and just kind of helping people. And so I changed that at the very end. And so it's kind of migrated a little bit. But one of the things that I do still do is I teach at UCCS, and I've taught there for, gosh, I think it's been 12 or 13 years, I want to say. And so I'm still able to teach a little bit and still get that passion in there. But don't ask me about history too much anymore because I don't think I can remember much of anything I learned back in my undergrad years.
Where did you go to school?
So I did my undergrad at UNC Greeley. They have a great teaching program. If anybody wants to be a teacher, they have a great one. And then I did my master's here at UCCS, actually.
And how did you choose those particular schools? You know, how did UNC stick out for you, and then UCCS for your master's? Any advice for students on how to pick? You know, if one of those universities, or if a university is in their site, how do you pick and choose? I mean, there are so many options, right?
There are so many options. So as you know, my son right now, he's going to be a senior. So we're going through that right now is how do you choose? But for me, one of the things was, well, obviously, since I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to look at some of the better schools for teaching, and Greeley was definitely one of them. The other thing that I looked at was cost, and for us, growing up, we didn't have much money at all, and so I wanted to make sure that, you know, staying in state was important. I had looked at outside the state at universities, but I knew that I needed to pay for my own college, and so staying in state was important to me. So somewhere that had the education that I needed, but that was cost effective for me. And then obviously being in state, it was close to home, but it was far enough away. So 2 hours away is perfect. You feel like you're far enough away, you can stay in the dorms, but you can come home, you know, every other weekend or so and get a nice home cooked meal. So that was important, I think, for my undergrad. And then my master's, so when you kind of get towards, I guess, the middle of my career-ish, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. I was running the Small Business Development Center, which actually at the time was on the campus of UCCS. And then from there, I started the placement office. And so it was great because at most universities, they will let you take so many credits for free if you are full-time faculty or staff, depending on what it is. And so they let me take a few credits every semester there. So I was able to get my master's while I was working there full time. So it was great. It was a great way to do that.
I love your master's. Sounds so interesting. Leadership and research. So what was that focused on?
So that was mainly focused on higher education. So at the time I was, like I said, I had started the placement office. And so I was really interested in the internship side. So I was placing students in internships and full-time placement once they got their business degree. And so I was really interested in learning more about higher education and increasing students' learning, especially when it came to internships. And so that was really my focus, and I was wanting to do more of that and possibly increase my or continue my career in higher education.
And how, so you spent some time, you did your undergrad and then your master's was a little bit later. You had a break in between there. What would you say is the first role that you had that was in business that really helped drive that spark for you and say, I'm good at this. This is clicking for me. This is working for me. And this is something that I can do, that I want to do, that I want to continue. What was the first opportunity you had that sparked that in your mind?
Oh, that's great. So kind of funny. So I got my undergrad in kinesiology sports science. And I knew that that's what I want to do, but there wasn't a ton of jobs in that at the time. I had also, my husband and I, we got married and decided to have our first kid. And we know that can kind of change things. So I went and I worked and I ran a lighting store actually, which is so totally random. But I ran a lighting store in the Springs. And so it was a pretty big lighting store. And I knew a lot about, electrical things and stuff. My dad was an electrician growing up. So I ran that. So this is kind of funny. So I enjoyed doing that. I got to work with home builders. I got to grow the store, but that's not what I wanted to do. So I was holding this big sale on a Saturday, and I was on the radio and stuff like that because internet was not that big of a thing then. And somebody came in from DeWalt. So DeWalt Tools. So at the time they were owned by Black & Decker, and they came in and they said, "We heard you on the radio. We would love to interview you to look at running our sales for the Western region for DeWalt. Would you come and interview with us in Maryland?" And I was like, "What? I don't know. I mean, I know some things about tools, but what are you talking about?" So anyways, a couple weeks later, I went out to Maryland and I interviewed for a job out there, 5 days, and I got the job. And they moved me to Phoenix, Arizona, and then that's where I started career there. So that I would say, so I ran their region out there for DeWalt. And I was able to work with NASCAR, and that I think right there, one of the funnest jobs I've ever had in my life. I got to travel, I got to sell, I got to work with big businesses, with small businesses. That right there is when I was like, I think that this is what I want to do. I want to work on the business side of things. So I know that was a long answer, but it was so much fun being able to do that.
It's a great answer. And it's a great answer for a couple of reasons. Number one, you never know, you were on the radio and you took an opportunity to be your best on the radio at the moment, right? And then someone heard you and the way that you carried yourself that day, the way you delivered yourself, impress someone enough to give you an opportunity that really helped launch a career for you that you ended up loving and enjoying. And you just never know when those opportunities are going to come. You never know when you're going to be doing a job because, and a lot of times you mentioned having kids, a lot of times the opportunity might be right. You might not be thinking, I can't wait to work at a lighting store. But if the opportunity is right, the people are right, the benefits are right, the culture works for you. Those are things that are really important when you think about a career. But you had an opportunity and you took it and you were your best self, and then someone acknowledged that, recognized it, and helped launch a different career path for you as well. I love that it was DeWalt. So was this the first time, did you do sales and marketing for them? So like with the, was it, I'm picturing like DeWalt on the race cars. Were you helping to manage their product placements?
Yeah, so it was kind of a lot of different things. So we did sales and marketing and product placement for them. So I got put in Arizona because of their western region. Although I always joke that I don't know why they moved me to Arizona because all I did was I traveled all the time. So I was a brand manager is what I was. So we mainly called on Home Depot and Lowe's because if you go in there, you see DeWalt everywhere, right? And so I would hit all of the main Home Depot and Lowe's, and you try to get more stuff into their stores. But then we had sales teams underneath us that would then help put up the different product placement and things like that within that whole region. But one of the things that we got to do back then is that DeWalt owned their own sprint car. And so I was fortunate enough during that time that I got to go around with NASCAR at all the races, and we got to do what was called Rolling Thunder. And so we would go out on usually like a Tuesday or something like that, and we would bring our big 18-wheelers, and we would set up for the races that weekend, and we would hit Home Depot and Lowe's. We would bring out our driver, who was Matt Kinsick, and then we would actually go to the races, and everybody would get to, try the tools, and then we would get to sit at the races, and we would put up big tents, and anyways, so much fun. So I got to travel a lot with them, got to learn a ton about marketing and business development and product placement and all of that stuff. And I still have friends who worked there back then, and that was way back in, gosh, I think I started with them in 2002 or something like that. So, but it was wonderful. Like I said, one of the best jobs. I still have a whole garage full of DeWalt tools. We always joke that if my husband's friends want to come over, they knock on the door and say, "Hey, can we borrow your wife's tool?" So, love it.
I do love that. And then the other thing, so that was one. There was an opportunity, you took it. But the other thing is, if you are a leader at an organization, you're in hiring, you never know. You have to trust your instincts about talent, and you have to trust your instincts about the people that you think might be good for your team. So if there's a student who might be building a team, maybe they're wanting to launch their own business, I've heard several times you can train people to do a job, but you can't train a personality. You can't train a work ethic. So, you didn't know specifically about DeWalt tools, but they knew they could train you about that product. But what they appreciated about you was the drive, the work ethic. So when we're building teams, it's so important to think about those personalities. Have you noticed that on your journey, that it's not always the person that might have the right skill set, but it's the person with the right attitude?
Oh man, you hit the nail on the head, for sure. And I think that's like two things actually. That's why it's so important to get to know the people around you, to get to know your teachers, right? Not just come in and do your work and then leave, or your professors. Get to know them, because you never know that they might recommend you for something, even if you don't think that you're qualified for it. But I built a lot of teams over the years, and it's funny so as I said, we started McNew and Associates back in 2007. I didn't come to work full time with McNew and Associates until about 6 years ago. And one of the things that I did, I brought one of my students with me, and I remember Calvin. And Calvin, I said, when I leave and I go to McNew full time, I want Calvin there. And I remember sitting down with Calvin. I said, Calvin, I have no idea what your seat looks like on the bus. I just want you on the bus. Those were my exact words, because I knew that he had that entrepreneurial spirit. I had no idea what the heck he was going to do for McNew. He was not an accountant, actually. He was the only other one that was not an accountant. But I knew that I wanted him there. And I think that sometimes you just need those people. And so it's so important that as we go out and we volunteer, that we get to know those people, because they might recommend us for something that we had no idea, and that could launch our career or put us in a totally different direction that we had no idea that we would ever be in. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, attitude, work ethic, who you are, how you show up, all so important, right? Yes, know the skills, know the roles, know your stuff, but also be the best person on the job. What was next? So you're at DeWalt, you're working with NASCAR. How did someone pull you away from that opportunity, or what in life took you to a different place?
So funny story. So my husband and I decided that we wanted another kid. And so I was pregnant. And this is good. I went into labor at a NASCAR race in Vegas. So no kidding, it was early. It was early, so I did not want to leave. We were watching. It was between Matt Kenseth and who was it? Jimmy Johnson. And they were right there at the end, and I am in labor, and they are like, "You need to leave. We got to get you to the hospital." I wasn't even in my own city, and I was like, "No!" Like, you can just picture that this is a NASCAR race, right? But anyway, so I had my youngest one, and I was traveling all the time. My poor husband was basically doing it all alone, and so I decided that I probably needed to step back. So I left DeWalt, and it was sad. Like I said, that was probably one of the most fun jobs that I have ever had. So we actually moved back to Colorado, because this is where family is. I was born and raised in Colorado. And through a friend of mine, put me in contact with the Small Business Development Center. And so at the university, and so I went and interviewed there, and I was the assistant director of the Small Business Development Center, which was somewhat random, but was such a great opportunity. And so I did that for a couple years, but in that, as I mentioned, it was part of UCCS. And so I was kind of working under Venkat Reddy, who's the chancellor now. He wasn't, he was the dean for the College of Business. And I really noticed when working with those businesses that they couldn't find good talent. And I was teaching at the time as well. So they had asked me to teach a couple classes, and the students were like, "We can't find good jobs." And I was like, well, there's obviously a disconnect, right? So we need to build this bridge. And so we didn't have a placement office. So I put together a plan, and I submitted it to the College of Business board basically, and said, "Let's do a placement office." And they said, "Okay." And I went, "Oh, okay, well then I guess we better do this then." And so we launched that in 2008. And when I left there, when I decided to turn it over, because I think I had done what I could do at that time, we were placing over 1,000 students a year, and it was crazy, with internships and paid internships, full-time placement, all of those different things. We were even doing stuff in the College of Engineering, education, all over the place. And by then we had set up other internship programs throughout the university, through Bethel College of Nursing and all of that stuff. So it's kind of funny. It led me into all these different areas. And that is a huge passion of mine, is placement. I truly love it and enjoy it.
Placement, yeah. And then additionally, seeing how that's where that childhood dream of wanting to be a teacher, or, you know, it was the later young adult dream of, I want to teach, I'd love to teach. So you were able to teach, and you still are at UCCS, which is part of that vision when you were younger that you're able to still live out today, seems like. And that's where the master's happened, at this time period. Is that where you got your master's?
Yeah, exactly. So I got my master's while I was doing the placement office. And so it really tied together. One of the things that a lot of students ask me is, you know, do you think that I should go and get my master's right after my undergrad? And I always say, of course, it depends on what you're doing. There are some things that you have to have a master's for in order to get that job. You know, if you're going to go into, you know, psychology now, to be an accountant, to get your CPA license, you know, there's certain things. Otherwise, I think one of the best things that I did is wait. My undergrad, to be real honest with you, I don't remember most of anything, like the actual work, because I was just so focused on getting a job. But then because I waited and I was doing my master's, you know, after I'd had a lot of that real world experience, it was one of the best experiences of my life, because I had already had that experience. I feel like I could contribute to the class. You know, the classrooms are a lot smaller and things like that. And it was, like I said, it was one of the best experiences ever, because I was able to contribute, and it was great.
That is a really important point. And then also thinking about if you had gotten your master's right away in kinesiology, or, in something that didn't end up really living out your passion, that would also be different. So you were able to take some time, explore the career force, explore the world, professionally, and understand which roles you might like to do. I've talked to a lot of students who say, I wanted to be a nurse so badly. I mean, all I wanted to do was be a nurse. And then they would go to nursing school, and literally the first semester they would realize, okay, I actually don't want to be a nurse. It's, the day to day is what's important. What you're doing every day at your work is going to be so critically important. And right now in the two roles where you're at, so you're a business owner, and we need to go back and talk about that. And then SAFE Engineering recognized talent and said, hey, we need some of what you're bringing over here to what we're doing, and asked you to help out with them as well. But your day to day, what is it about the day to day that you find inspiring, that motivates you, and that really keeps that drive going for you?
Well, every day is different in a small business, and both of these businesses are relatively small. And so I think that there's a couple things that keep me going. One is the employees, right? We talked about teaching, and I think that working with people, employees, is it's the best thing and the worst thing. No, it's a lot of fun because you get to work with them. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different personality. They all work differently. They all need things differently, and I really enjoy that part of it. I enjoy being able to help mentor, to help develop people and what they need. One of the most fun things about owning or running a small business is doing things different for your employees. So one of the things that we get to do in a small business that you don't get to do, I think, in a large business is offer different things. So for example, if you go into my office now, and Angie, I think that you've seen it, if you go in there now, I've got puzzles setting out on the table. There's coloring books, and that sounds so juvenile, but when you're at work all day, it's fun to be able to sit down and color or put together a puzzle. We love to have company picnics. Actually, this week we're all going to get together, socially distancing, in a park, and we're all going to get together and eat together. They get to join the YMCA, and they get to do different things like that. So I really enjoy working with the individuals, seeing what they like. The other part of it is working with the clients. We have clients all over the US. Everybody is different, and that's a lot of fun, seeing how to better operate your company. We just put health benefits in place for the other company that I'm working for now, and so just things like that. It's fun to be able to do that. I enjoy it, at least.
Something that I noticed from you is it's about relationships and working with people. And so you seem very connected to relationship building in an effort to either, whether it's job placement and helping someone on their career path. You are on the board of Junior Achievement and have been instrumental in leadership at that organization, at our organization, and I've benefited from that. So it's clear. I think your answer doesn't surprise me at all, that it would be about the people, because that maintains such a focus for you, and you clearly show that in your leadership style. All right, let's talk about starting the business. So you were, at the Small Business Development Center. You created their job placement program, which again at Junior Achievement of Southern Colorado, we've actually benefited from that. We've had work study students placed with us that have been phenomenal. Tell us about how you decided to start your own business and take that adventure. We talk a lot about whether you are an entrepreneur at heart and you have that in you, or you're someone who takes a more traditional career path and goes to work for another organization. You've done both, and you saw both opportunities in your career journey. So what instinctively and instinctually told you, you know what, I think we should do this. We should start our own business. How do you get there?
A little bit of crazy. I think it's what it is. So as I mentioned, my parents, my mom was a hairdresser. and my dad was an electrician. Later on in life, they both decided to start their own business too, and I think that gave me some of that. My husband's grandfather owned his own businesses. He owned restaurants, and I think so. Both of us had always kind of been like, I think that one day we want to own our own business. So I think that that's something that, that kind of helps as well, kind of growing up in that. And so when my husband and I were younger, and I didn't even mention that, we decided to own a paintball store. And so we owned a paintball store when we were a lot younger. We knew nothing about paintball. We sponsored one of the top paintball guys or whatever as well. And actually he got featured on an Xbox, one of the first like Xbox things. But anyway, so we've always wanted to do these sorts of things. So anyways, back to McNew and Associates. My husband was working for the Department of Defense, and he was just slogging through it. And he was like, you know what, not happy. Didn't want to work for the government anymore. We wanted to help small businesses on that side. And so we had a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and he was like, let's just do it. I'm gonna quit my job today with all my benefits and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let's do it. And literally we just did it. There is no good time to do it. It is the thing. It is scary, and you just have to leap off and do it. I don't know that I would recommend that. It's probably good to have like a job on the side and start a business if you can. Although what's good about just leaping off the cliff and doing it is that you don't have a choice, right? You have to get up every day and you have to make it work. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think that growing up in that a little bit as I got older helped, and same thing with my husband. If you don't have, especially if you're married, if you don't have a partner that's going to help support that, it makes it a lot more difficult.
Right. And that partner in your case is your husband. And we've also talked with business partners who met literally just because the opportunity was there. So we've met restaurateurs who come together because they each bring a certain skill set. So I think partnership is key to what you're saying, finding that right partner. And in your case, it was your spouse, it was your partner at home, but it doesn't always have to be that way. You can find someone who brings the right skill set. What would you say has worked about your partnership that has helped you grow the business to where it is today?
My husband and I are very different. And I think that is what works well. And I think that goes for anything with any job, whether you're a manager, whether you're not, is finding people who complement what you're not good at, right? You always want to bring in people who are better than you at things that you're not good at. And I think that what makes good managers, that's what makes good leaders. Whatever it is sometimes people don't want to do that because they're worried about that, but that's the best thing. So I think that with my husband and I, we're very, very different, right? He's an auditor. He thinks very differently than I do. It's funny, as an auditor, he's very like big picture, but can never actually get anything done, which is funny because being an accountant, he's very methodical like that, where I'm an operational person. So I'm like, yes, let's do this. Here's what we're going to do. And that's what works for us. But I'm also very business development, where he doesn't want to do that. And so I think that that's what's worked for us. So I would say, for anyone thinking about getting into business, or like I said, who wants to manage or whatever, find people who complement you, who are good at what you're not good at. And over time, you definitely know what you're not good at. That's for sure. And that's okay. Just know that and recognize it.
That's so important, Lisanne, because sometimes people are afraid to be vulnerable and have someone who might know more than them, or they might be afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that question. And I think that can really hold you back professionally, because if you're in a situation where you just try, there are times where we have to learn and ask enough questions. But there are also times when we need to raise our hand and say, I'm not the smartest person in the room on this one. I think you are. What can you help me understand to make me better? And you have to have that vulnerability professionally and with yourself to be willing to understand what you need to learn to do things differently and what you can learn from other partners in order to really achieve your best. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially with the two different companies that I'm with now, I'm not the smartest person in the room ever, right? I mean, I've got accountants and auditors, and then I've got these engineers that do all types of crazy things, and I don't understand half of what they're talking about, right? And that's okay. I don't need to. What I bring to the table is the business side and building a business and operating it, and that's okay. They are so talented when it comes to engineering and when it comes to accounting and those sorts of things. And so you hire those people. Actually, it was funny. Just last week, somebody called me and said, one of your employees is going to be in this meeting. We'd like to invite you. And I was like, nope, that is way above my pay grade. I don't know anything about that. I don't do any of that. They are good on their own. Like that's not anywhere in my repertoire of what I know. So yeah, I think that's so important. And I think it gets easier as you get older, because when you're younger, you want to learn all that stuff and know it. And that's okay. Like you said, you need to learn some of those things, but there becomes a point where you're like, nope, hire somebody who's smarter than me.
And that's such a great point. And then you also bring up a great point as a leader. When you have that person, when you've picked the right talent, you have to know when to trust them and when to trust that they are making the right. There are times where you provide feedback, you ask the right questions, but understanding when you need to let go and say, I trust you to work on this and get this done. And finding leaders like that, I think, will be important in your career. Finding those mentors, finding the people that you can work with and who supervise you, who will help you on that journey in the right way, is so critically important too. But you had started your own business with your husband, and it's rolling well. And then another opportunity came along for you at Safe Engineering. What made you say yes?
Because I'm crazy. So Safe was actually a client of McNew, and has been for quite a few years. And so they were looking to make a change and to grow. And so they asked me to do this. And have asked me for a little bit of time, and it wasn't right yet. And I just thought, you know what, my kids are getting older. I think that this is a good time. McNew and Associates runs well and smoothly. I have such a great team. And so let's not look for a new challenge. And so I decided to go ahead and take this on. And a new challenge it has been. It is definitely a steep learning curve. I don't know anything about engineering. But as I mentioned, I do know about business and kind of that Department of Defense side. And so it's been fun and challenging. It's only been hasn't even been 3 months yet. But it's been super, super exciting. And so, just something else to go along with 2020.
Well, yeah, what a year. But I think it's important that we also identify that something we talk about in junior achievement programming. While there are people who are students who might say, I don't really need this course because I want to be a basketball player, or I don't really need this course because I'm going to be a chef. At the core of everything that you might do, if it's an entrepreneurial endeavor or a professional endeavor, business is at the core, and understanding operations of a business, understanding sound fiscal priorities and policies. While you're not the accountant in the room or the engineer in the room, what you're bringing to the table is that skill set of how to streamline, how to see logistically what makes sense from an operations perspective, how to build talent, how to develop talent. Those are such critically important skills that you can also learn through our junior achievement programming that we think is so important no matter what career field you're going into. We need these leaders who can really help to pull all of this together for us. So we talk about that a lot in JA programming too, which because in addition to this volunteer experience, you're also a volunteer with JA as well. Well, if you had something that you could share with students that might be advice or something that you might offer to students to really help them as they try to develop their own career journeys, what might you say to students who are either graduating from, let's say you're graduating from like the 10th grade, you're going to 11th grade and you're starting to pick that career field or starting to look at colleges. What would you tell students to keep in mind?
So it's always hard for me to pick one thing. I think I have three different things that I would say. And as you've heard, I've kind of gone like this in my career, and especially when you look at my degree. So one, I would say you don't have to make a decision right this moment, because even if you do, it could possibly change, and that's okay. That's okay. Let it happen. I would not go back and change any of my degrees or any of the decisions that I've made, because it's led me to where I am. So you don't have to make a decision. And if you have, that's great. My oldest son wants to be a commercial pilot. He's known that since he was 3, and that has never changed. And that's what he's going to be. And that's okay. My youngest one has no clue. And that's okay. So don't feel forced that you have to know right now, because that's probably going to change. The second thing, and I kind of mentioned this, is get involved in everything that you can. Whether it's volunteering, whether it's something at the school, and when you do those things, really get to know those people. As I mentioned, get to know your teachers. It can even just be the first day of class going up and, hi, I'm Lisanne McNew. Who are you? People want to talk to you. Whether it's an internship, which I think is the most important thing ever. Angie, you mentioned that, people go into nursing and then they go the first day and they're like, why did I do this? Do an internship. It's not necessarily to know what you want to do. It's to know what you don't want to do, right? You go in there and you go, oh, I think I want to do marketing. And then you do an internship and you're like, that sucks. Like, why would I ever do this? So I would say get involved in those things, get to know people, because you never, ever know, what you're going to find because of that. And as a part of that, I would say the third thing is find a mentor. And it doesn't have to be the same one forever. They are going to change. So it can be a student. Maybe it's your mom or dad. Maybe it's someone else in the community, but find a mentor that you can go to and that you trust. And as you get older, it's kind of your kitchen cabinet, right? The people who you really trust. I have a few of those people that I can go to and talk to about anything. And they will tell me, Lisanne, that is a dumb idea. You're acting stupid. Or no, this is great. Or here's what you should do. Just people who you can really bounce ideas off of. And it doesn't matter if you're 10 or if you're 60, those are always great people to have. So those are kind of my three ideas that I have, that I would tell myself looking back.
Those are perfect. And then additionally for mentors, so you had role models at home, but something that I've noticed is if you don't have a mentor currently in your sphere of influence, perhaps, but when you reach out to someone and say, I'm impressed by you and I'm really impressed by what you do, would you be willing to spend a little time with me? I find that, most of the time, those people, if you are brave enough to ask someone to serve as your mentor, just to have a conversation, to have one phone call, one video call, one in-person meeting, if you're brave enough to ask, you will very likely, you might have some no's, but you're going to get some yeses as well. And that's something that we've learned through the speaker series, is that along the way, whether the role model was at home or the role model wasn't at home, there was always a mentor and someone guiding. And it was those who were brave enough to go in and ask for help and ask for a mentor or someone to have a conversation with them. Those make those connections and those build those relationships, which help take you far on your career path. I think that's a really important point you make about mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you bring up a good point. People are always willing to be mentors. And so even if it's not somebody who you know, and if you're like me, and I'd really love to own my own coffee shop one day, and there's a coffee shop down the road, because we have so many local coffee shops or local restaurants or whatever it is, I guarantee you that if someone goes in and says, hey, can I talk to the manager or to the owner, and you send an email or you call them and say, this is who I am. Can I just sit down with you? Because I would love to own one day. 9 times out of 10, they're going to sit down with you and talk to you because they want to. And people love to talk about themselves, and people want to mentor. So they will absolutely do that. And that is really in any industry. And maybe you won't get a job there or maybe whatever, but I guarantee you down the road, that is absolutely going to pay off because you have no idea who they can introduce you to, or maybe they just give you great advice, things that they've gone through. And so I think that's an excellent point.
I think students can learn from your success to be brave, to not put yourself in a box, right? Take some opportunities that you wouldn't think. I mean, you went on that interview with DeWalt, and it was on a whim. You said, why in the world would I want to do that? I'm doing this. But you went, and then it opened your eyes to an opportunity that was something that you ended up loving and having a great experience. So just saying yes to that opportunity provided a new career path for you. And then I also see innovation. So when you were at the Small Business Development Center, creating the job placement program and really taking an idea and saying, this is a solution provider for our community that isn't currently here. And it's a skill set that I can bring. And then you said yes, and you were brave in building your own business, which has not only been successful for you and your husband, but has also been a career resource for everyone who works on your staff. You've been able to build jobs in our community. And then in addition to that, you were really able to provide a service to clients that wasn't there before. It's all about connecting with people, supporting people, and providing those resources back to your community. And that's what our businesses do. And you've been a shining example of that professionally, and not only working to help Lisanne's career path, but everything and every choice that you have made has helped your community and has really helped to give back. And I think that's impressive. And I think students can learn a lot from being brave, being innovative, keeping people first and focusing on that, but also focusing on smart business and those smart business practices that you're able to implement everywhere you go. Anything else you'd like to share with the students before we close out today, Lisanne?
I don't think so, but I just, I appreciate your time today, Angie. And of course, I love Junior Achievement, such a wonderful organization. Everything that they do for the community, for Colorado, and really all over the nation. So I really appreciate this time, and hopefully somebody was able to get something out of this. And if anybody wants to contact me, I would be happy to sit down and have coffee and talk about my process and what I've done in my life. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think that'd be wonderful. And you can always contact our Junior Achievement office in Southern Colorado, and we can share Lisanne's contact information with anyone who might want to know more about her journey or ask her a few more questions as well. So Lisanne, thank you so much for being willing to share your story today. I'm inspired by you, and I'm sure that our other students are as well. Thank you.
Thank you.